All right, I welcome everyone to Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Peanuts webinar. I hope everyone can see the screen that we're sharing. We would request anybody who does log on to mute themselves, and we won't be using any video other than screen sharing for the webinar, just because it makes it easier to keep track of things and keep the bandwidth to a reasonable size. The main purpose of this webinar is simply to present some basic information regarding the two requests for proposals that we have out, and in particular to answer any questions that anyone has who's joined the webinar. I think we found in previous webinars that the best way to do that is type your questions into the chat screen, and you can do that at any time. And then we'll go through quickly at the end of this short presentation and try to address all of those questions and comments. As we've done previously, this presentation and a transcript of the questions that were asked and our replies, as well as a recording of this webinar, will be posted on the Peanut Innovation Lab website. And links provided to that, or at least information regarding how to access that, will be made available on the RFP site that announces the two RFPs. So if you can't see the screens that have a short presentation, then please chat and let us know. But otherwise, we'll assume that everyone can see the screen that we're sharing. I'll be making just a short 15-minute or so, maybe less, presentation regarding the RFPs, so that hopefully that will address some of your questions. But as I said, at the end, then we'll open up for questions from anyone who's logged in. Just a little bit of information regarding the Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Peanut Award. Our full title is there on the screen. Our short name is the Peanut Innovation Lab. The University of Georgia was awarded this from USAID. It is a 5-year award, started in mid-January of this year, and then would run till mid-January of 2023. So we're really just at the beginning of getting started. Fortunately, the University of Georgia was hosting the previous award that funded the Peanut and Mycotoxin Innovation Lab, and so most of the management entity that was needed to set up the project and manage it was pretty much already in place. And so we've been able to get going as quickly as possible, and have actually then been able to hopefully complete the 4 major calls for proposals by the end of our first fiscal year. The award is a up to $35 million award that would include associate awards and buy-ins from USAID missions around the world, and basically initially commits $14 million to set up, manage, and fund the research over the 5-year program. I won't be talking a lot about the program itself. There is information regarding the award, at least initially, on the website, Peanut Innovation Lab website, and so you're free to look at that. Specifically, the award funds, as I said, the management entity, or University of Georgia, and then a portion of the total award then goes to fund our research projects, which are really identified through calls for proposals. The current 2 that we have out that were recently announced are in 2 of the 4 areas of inquiry, and these are around the areas of peanut nutrition and the roles of gender and youth in the peanut value chains. We have had 2 RFPs out previously, probably 3 months ago, One of these was on varietal development, and the second was on value-added gains. They follow these two RFPs will follow a very similar process that we'll talk about here briefly. But these other two areas are basically in the final stages of reviewing full proposals that were requested and hopefully working towards awards of those projects here in the next couple of months, we hope. All of our research and competitively bid projects we feel are probably somewhere between 2 to 4 years in length. And so in this case, we're anticipating that we might be able to get awards made. This says 1st of November, but I think more realistically, we're looking at perhaps sometime in December and maybe as late as early January, just given the time that we find it takes to do the reviews properly and give time for people to put together a full proposal. We still hope that we can manage a up to 4-year period, but we will have to be looking at some of these proposals that might not be awarded until early next year, simply because we need to terminate the projects on or before our termination date of the full 5-year award, so we have time to write all the final reports, etc. In terms of an award amount, we've indicated that these projects could be up to $500,000 over the 2 to 4 years. Obviously, if they're shorter periods, we would anticipate that those budgets would be less, and because of the nature of those short-term, more focused projects. In terms of target countries, like all innovation labs, we've worked with USAID to identify which countries we think we could focus on, either because we think we can have good partnerships with institutes in those countries, and or we feel that there is a strong justification. USAID did announce last year a new set of 12 Feed the Future target countries, and so our first priority are those countries where we see a strong presence of peanuts and or partnerships. And so we've listed those as Ethiopia, Ghana, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, Senegal, and Uganda. But we also recognize that because of particularly some projects and partnerships that we had in the previous award, countries like Haiti, Malawi, Mozambique, and Zambia, while not in the current list of target Feed the Future countries, still remain Feed the Future countries and still could justify a good partnership as we develop our research portfolios. So we've listed those as secondary priority. All countries, of course, will need to have a good justification for what we're going to be doing there and what the partnerships are, et cetera. It's just that if you're not in a first priority country, then you'll need to have a slightly stronger justification for why these other countries are being proposed. There are, of course, other Feed the Future countries and countries that USAID work with and in. And so they're not excluded, and there are other even target Feed the Future countries that we've not selected as our first priority. So they are open to being submitted as proposed targets. It's just that we would again need a good, strong justification and rationale for why those countries are being proposed, either as partners or as targets. In terms of kind of the timeline that we projected for these two requests for proposals, obviously the release was done on the 29th of June. We're currently today on the 16th with our webinar. We propose that the concept notes are due on or before midnight of the 3rd of August. We then will be undergoing a review of those concept notes, and that's done by those of us in the management entity, the USAID administrative officer's representative, and others within USAID, and then the external advisory panel that we formed, 10 members, experts from around the world that provide input into the research portfolio that we're assembling. We're anticipating that review will take most of the rest of August. And in fact, more than likely, we will be having our final review of those concept notes sometime in the first week of September. We hope, based on, I guess, our experience in our previous RFPs, that we could have the requests out for full proposals sometime by the second week of September, and try to give the respective PIs at least a full month or up to 6 weeks maybe to draft and submit the full proposals. And then those full proposals undergo kind of an evaluation to make sure that they meet the criteria and some of the feedback that would be given on concept notes. We doubt that we would be able to have a starting date on these projects much before the 1st of December. And as I said in the beginning, it's likely that these would not take place much before perhaps the beginning of the year. But we'll do our best to get them processed and out as quick as possible. Everyone on this call probably has had a chance to download the RFPs from the PI-STAR website. Address is listed there, and you should be able to log in or create an account or get access to the RFPs and download those to submit it. Of course, you'll be able to create an account and make your submissions there online. We do not receive submissions by email, etc. to us, so hopefully everyone can access that system. There are ways to seek help, ask questions if you're having problems accessing that, and either ourselves or the PI-STAR company will provide help in trying to access and use that site as our submission site. As indicated in the RFP, we actually we're requesting at this point basically short concept notes, around 3 pages, 3 to 4 pages, which really gives us an idea of who is proposing, what kind of partnerships being proposed, and a good idea of what is the actual proposed research that would be conducted by the team, and a very preliminary budget, which basically it only needs to indicate roughly the amount of money per partner per year for the project. Those concept notes then, as I mentioned, will be reviewed by our external advisory panel, and the criteria that hopefully everyone is seeing on the screen now gives you an idea of kind of how these will be evaluated and the weights that we're putting on these different areas. Concept notes then will be discussed. Usually we try to have an in-person meeting with our EAP and USAID. We'll be looking at various concept notes, looking at evaluating them, and hopefully coming up with a consensus among all the group as to which ones should be requested to develop full proposals. As mentioned in the RFPs, there's always the likelihood, possibility that we will be interested to combine different concept notes if that seems to make sense to us for various reasons, and or selecting parts out of different concept notes. So we try to provide feedback on what we think makes the most sense in a full proposal as we go forward. The Innovation Labs, for those who are new to the concept, is not a granting agency. We are a project. We have objectives that we've agreed to with USAID. USAID has objectives that they would like us to accomplish in our 5 years, and so we have to put together a portfolio of research that fits together, that accomplishes everything that we've agreed to try to do, etc. So it's not simply a case of getting proposals in, ranking them from 1 to N, and selecting the first 5 because that's the top rankings. We look at a number of different criteria and ideas as we evaluate our proposals. But these criteria are quite important and clearly indicate that we're looking for innovativeness and good science that will help us reach the goals and objectives that we've set forward. We are particularly interested as part of our capacity building that many of our projects are led by our target country, our host countries, scientists, so where that's feasible. Clearly, we anticipate that almost all of our projects will involve a collaboration between a U.S. PI and or a host country PI. But we're also hoping and are willing to do whatever we can to encourage our host countries scientists to take the lead and to develop those proposals and then to manage those projects moving forward. Capacity building remains the criteria, and of course, given the sources of funding and the way innovation labs operate, indicating and identifying dual benefits to the U.S. agricultural system and our target countries is critical. And while one of our RFPs specifically addresses gender and youth and research in that area, all projects, all activities that we undertake, of course, need to consider gender and youth as they develop them. And so, particularly in the case of nutrition, this will be a very important component. Just a bit on student degree training, because it is something that often is involved in many of our projects. Students, one of the, I guess, importance that the Innovation Labs brings to training is the ability to have U.S. mentorship, as well as experience in visiting U.S. It's not necessary that the U.S. university be the host institute for the student, and there are good universities around the world that can also provide more efficient and effective mentorship or hosting. But we do think it's important that there be a U.S. mentor involved in that student's training and research, and as well opportunities for the students to experience the U.S. university setting. We would also encourage international experience in conferences, other meetings. Both in conferences and your research meetings. In terms of our priorities, clearly capacity building and particularly in students that we do in our innovation labs are really targeted to building capacity in our host countries. So our initial priority would be finding national students from our home countries, host and target countries, other target countries, counties, countries, and U.S. students can be proposed and justified, and we have had in the past several U.S. students that participated in our research, particularly when they were able to conduct a lot of their research overseas in one of our target countries. So finally, just some things to keep in mind before we open it up. I don't know whether there's been any questions so far. Just remember that these are a partnership between U.S. scientists and target country scientists. We encourage our target country scientists to become PIs of projects, submit concept notes, and hopefully lead full proposals. Just a reminder that there is a template in the RFP of what's required in the concept note. We would appreciate it if everyone would follow that as closely as possible. And remind that you would encourage you to check the Pi-Star and or the Peanut Innovation Lab sites periodically for updates. If we have, as I said, we'll be posting the outcome of this discussion. And oftentimes we'll provide other information regarding the RFPs, et cetera, on those sites. So you might want to check those from time to time. And we look forward to receiving everyone's concept notes by the 3rd of August on the Pi-Star site. So I'll leave that at questions now.
There was one person trying to get in that was not admitted.
I thought it didn't open. We have to share.
Manage participants.
Oh, there's a bunch of people. Why aren't they being muted? Can't we just undo the unmute? All right, well, we just realized that I think the website was set up to require us to admit people, so there might be a few people that just joined us, unfortunately. So I apologize for that. Basically, I just went through a quick overview of the 2 RFPs, outlining a few details, all of which are in the 2 different calls. So we just finished that and are ready to address any questions. As I said, if you can, the best way is to just type them into the chat window, and then we both record them so we have them for future reference, but as well can try to address them. So one of the first questions is quite easy, is the $500,000 figure that is quoted for the projects for 1 year or for 4 years. That's for the total duration of the project. So if it's a 4-year project, that would be $500,000 total for 4 years. As I mentioned, if it's a shorter period project, I guess you could propose up to $500,000, but we would hopefully anticipate that probably that would be a lower figure in terms of a total budget. You want to take the next ones? Yeah. Maybe I should, maybe at the beginning I didn't even introduce who's on the call from our end. Maybe I should do that. Sorry about that. I'm Dave Hoisington. I'm the director of the Peanut Innovation Lab, and I also have here with me Jamie Rhodes, who's the assistant director, and Allison Floyd, who is our communications specialist. So Jamie and I will probably answer these questions back and forth just so that one of us isn't talking the whole time.
I think so the next question of how to explain more clearly the evaluation on the scientific merit for the concept notes. The primary way that we would be doing that would be using our external advisory panel. We have a diverse expertise across the panel. There's 10 members, and they're listed on the website, so you know who they are. As well as ourselves. I don't know if there's any other sort of formal criteria for the scientific merit on of the proposal beyond the expertise of the panel and the management entity.
Yeah.
The final question, at least for now, is what are the average funding levels anticipated for the calls? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see what we get for concept notes. I mean, part of the objective of us being a project rather than a funding agency is that we can kind of at the ME level with input from our AOR and from the EAP make decisions based on the criteria listed on where we would put our funding within the project. So there could be kind of all over the place, or in terms of research investment, or all all about the same. I'm not really sure. It would really depend on the number of projects that we get and the overall cost of those projects.
Yeah, and I think the only thing I would add is clearly where a project can leverage other funding is always seen as positive, not only by us, but I think any funder today. But you know, where we're contributing to a larger project and there's clear benefit for our participation, and that's always a positive. And the other is, as I mentioned in the brief intro to the overall award, while we have 14 million that was initially identified for the project, we do have another $21 million that hopefully can be acquired from missions and buy-ins based on their interest to participate. Now, we don't normally direct our projects specifically to those countries or to those opportunities, but every once in a while they will arise, and so it gives us the ability to go out and hopefully attract additional funding too, where we're not able to totally find all the funding within our own current budget.
No other questions right now.
Where do I see the chat?
Yes, we do.
Okay. One thing I just was mentioned that I think we left off the slide. It is mentioned in the RFP on the nutrition that we have been able to link up with the U.S. Industries Peanut Institute, which is the peanut industry's kind of institute that I'm trying to figure out what another word is. That's done a lot of work on addressing or identifying the nutrition and health benefits of peanuts consumption in the U.S. in particular, but they do some global research. And so they are interested in partnering with us on one or more of the projects under the nutrition RFP. So they will be, I guess, another part of our scientific evaluation of those projects. And hopefully we'll be able to identify a project where we both see some joint interest and ability to fund. We haven't identified the amount of money that they'll be able to contribute, and whether it'll just be to one or more, it really depends upon the concept. But they will be part of our process of the evaluation. They already are, because their chair of the board is on our advisory panel.
So yeah, there's a question about the sharing the slides. That this is being recorded, and it will be made available after, I don't know, what's the timeline on that? Later today.
Well,
there you go.
They'll be posted on our website, the Peanut Innovation Lab website. So we have a question that regarding the nutrition RFP, and in there we do talk about evaluating the impact of peanut products on the 1,000 days. And the question is what would be the target countries or priority countries for that? Our priorities would be, of course, our target countries in the developing world, the future countries. I think we realize that there has been quite a bit of work done already looking at some of that in the US. I guess it's not out of the question that there could be some studies going on in the US if that was justified, but I think we would definitely want to have a strong priority for addressing that in our target countries.
From the previous RFP webinar, there were a few frequently asked questions related to, you can submit more than one, you can submit more than one concept note if you want. There was some questions about private sector people submitting concept notes on the previous ones, and that's acceptable too. We would just, make sure that there's some collaboration with target country institutions for sure. I'm trying to think if there were any others that we haven't seen yet.
I'm trying to think what were the big questions. I mean, some of those frequently asked questions were, that document is posted on our website, correct, Allison?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's posted there. So there were some other questions, I think, regarding indirect costs, how those are calculated. And I know that even came up in the writing of some of the concept notes and proposals that institutes that have a NICRA, an audited NICRA that's approved by the US government, can use that in their indirect cost calculations. Other institutes don't have that type of indirect cost rate approved and audited, and I think they're allowed up to 10% as an indirect cost rate. And in thinking about the budgets for the project, the indirect costs for the awardee institute and any sub-awardees that are proposed as part of the project need to be part of that budget. The only costs, well, the only significant costs that the ME will be providing to all of our projects is for the annual research fee. As part of our program, we are proposing to have an annual meeting once a year, almost likely to be in one of our target countries. And so we have budgeted in our budget costs for the principal investigator of each of our projects to be able to attend that meeting. We would hope that those projects that are operating or have students or partners in that host country where we're having the meeting or nearby countries in the region would be able to support some of those participants and students to be able to participate in that meeting. I don't know where people are logging in from, but there was a question even before this webinar, which I'll just mention here for transparency's sake, as to whether or not the PI had to be from the US Institute. And there's no specific requirement that a PI has to be from the US. Clearly, we're interested in PIs from our target countries, but PIs can come from other countries in the US. I think our priority would be, or major criteria is that any PI would have a target country co-PI. And I guess if it makes sense, particularly if there are students involved in all that there was an involvement with a US PI, particularly for that dual benefit nature of the project that we hope we can identify.
No questions. So again, the slides and the audio of the webinar will be posted later this afternoon to the Peanut Innovation Labs website. I have put the link in the chat section, everyone. If you look, you can go ahead and go to the site, bookmark it, whatever. It should be up by 5 o'clock Eastern time this afternoon to look back at. We'll also probably post some of the more common questions in a facts section, just to look back and see what was asked most often.
Right. And we have the frequently asked questions from the previous RFP discussions. So those will be up there, and then we'll add any more from this one. Yes. And of course, if anyone has questions after this webinar is over, please feel free to reach out. You can ask it through the RFX system is preferred, so we can keep track of it. And we'll try to, like we did in the previous one, if we'll keep track of those questions, and hopefully we'll post the questions and answers as necessary moving ahead, particularly if we think they're relevant to, or important as you consider submitting your concept notes.
Okay, well, as we're wrapping up here, I wanted to make sure that everyone is aware. We also will have a discussion, a webinar next week, a week from tomorrow, Tuesday, July 24th, specifically about gender issues in peanut production and processing and marketing. We have some experts who are going to talk about some research questions that we've answered, some that still remain, and just some considerations along the entire value chain. So you're more than welcome to join us. It should be an interesting discussion. It's going to be at 11 a.m. Eastern time. If you have any difficulty finding it, shoot us an email and we'll send you the link.
Announced on our website.
It is announced on the website. Seems like everyone's got their questions.
Okay, well, I don't see any more questions coming in. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we will end the webinar at this point. As I said, we'll be posting all this information today or tomorrow at the latest. website. There'll be information on the RFX sites that now exist. Check back on those from time to time. If you, we might be posting more information in the future. We'll have links or information there as well about this webinar that will take place next week on gender specifically. Actually, it's to one of our presenters will be the author of one of the gender review papers that was commissioned by USAID, as well as one of the members of our external advisory panel to discuss the findings of that review and paper, as well as to discuss some of the issues around gender and peanuts. I'm sure that many of you who are interested in that RFP would find that useful as you think about proposals. And so we thank all of you for participating, and we look forward to receiving concept notes from you. And as I mentioned, if you still have any questions or comments, feel free to contact us through the RFX site. We'll do our best to get you answers to those questions as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day.